Le pasa a mí, le pasa a ella. Seguro que se acuerda de uno. Pero uno no tiene fondo, no sé. Hay audio, hay mucho mancheo.
Hello.
It's already 22.
How are you?
I already texted.
Sure, you can't hide back there. You can't park there, so hide behind the bushes.
You want to know who's streaming?
That's not me that's streaming. Huh?
No, I probably didn't take that chance.
Yeah, stay on my good time, please. Thanks, so. Only because David. Gracias.
Good afternoon and welcome to another beautiful day at FIU's Biscayne Bay campus. I'm Dr. Mike Heithaus and I have the honor to serve as the Vice Provost for this campus and the Executive Dean of the College of Arts, Sciences, and Education. At FIU, we're so proud to be designated as a preeminent state research institution by the state of Florida and to be recognized as a top 50 public research institution nationally. As rapid as the rise has been in the rankings, we are really just getting started here at FIU. We're pushing the boundaries of educational excellence, student success, and research impact. Last year, we did more than $325 million of sponsored research, and that research is about impact here in South Florida, across the state, the nation, and even worldwide. And for example, at our Wall of Wind, we are helping industry figure out how our infrastructure can withstand Category 5 hurricane winds. In Dr. Diana Azam's lab, they are coming up with treatments for pediatric cancer. And at Aquarius Reef Base, the world's only undersea research habitat, we're developing new technologies and making sure the coral reefs that are so important to our economy are healthy and providing the resources that people need. And here at the Biscayne Bay campus, we are developing technology for environmental resilience. We are creating the next leaders in hospitality, tourism management, journalism, nursing, and so much more. And none of that would have been possible without the incredible support from the state of Florida. And that's why we are so pleased to welcome our state Chief Financial Officer. So without further ado, please join me in a warm welcome for our Chief Financial Officer of the state of Florida, Blaise Ngolian.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you guys for coming here. I will say that we are here because the Fiscal Accountability Tour continues today here as we unveil the FAFO audit numbers for overspending for Miami-Dade County. Thank you for the introduction, and I understand and I listened about how FIU is pushing the boundaries when it comes to research. It's unfortunate, but Miami-Dade County is pushing the boundaries for what taxpayers could probably handle here in this county. My name is Blaise Ngolian. I am your Chief Financial Officer, and yet again, we're here exposing the wasteful and excessive spending of yet another government. Since entering this office as CFO, I hope that you have seen that we have been on a mission to highlight excessive, wasteful spending of local governments in an effort to make the case for serious property tax reform, including the elimination of property taxes on homesteaded properties all together. Now, so far, as we are doing this, we have done these calculations and these presentations on 8 local governments. And I wish I could say I was proud to say the total is $1.2 billion. It is unfortunate that that total is $1.2 billion that we have found in just 8 local governments. Hillsborough County, $278 million, wasteful and excessive. City of Jacksonville, $199 million, waste and excessive spending. Broward County, $189 million. Orange County, $190 million. Alachua County, $84 million. Seminole County, $48 million. Manatee County, $112 million. And the City of Miami, $94 million. Now, before the big government apologists and the leftists who are writing this on the editorials get ahead of this, they've been saying that this is an exercise in just dealing with blue Democrat counties. If you notice, in that list, you have Hillsborough County, which is run by a supermajority of Republicans. You have Seminole County, which is run by Republicans, and you have Manatee County, which is deep, deep red Republican county. In fact, I have noted and said that Manatee County, it was the worst by far that we had seen on a percentage basis of the amount of money that they are spending. So please do not buy into the rhetoric that they say that we're only targeting blue counties. We are targeting every single county that or city that we think is overspending, because this has nothing to do with Democrat. This has nothing to do with Republican. This has everything to do with the taxpayers. We are not advocating for property tax relief for one political party or another. We are advocating for property tax relief for everyone, because everyone in this state should matter when it comes to how they spend your property tax dollars. Now, that $1.2 billion does not belong in the hands of government. That $1.2 billion belongs in the hands of the taxpayers who sent that to the governments. That is $1 billion of property tax cuts in those 8 local governments that we believe they should have cut from their budgets. $1.2 billion worth of property tax cuts that we believe we could have given, you guys could have had in these 8 local governments without affecting services at all. So I want to be clear to everyone on this, especially the cameras in the back. Local governments are going to try to use every excuse in the book. They're going to fight with us. They're going to send out press releases. They're going to say yes, but X, or no, we couldn't because of Y. And I'm going to tell you right now, it is all excuses. The numbers are the numbers. They are going to list a parade of horribles. We predicted this on the 1st, and now this is the 9th, and they are still doing the same thing. They are saying that they can't. If they do it, government is just going to be absolutely decimated. You're going to have long wait times for 911 calls. You're going to call, you're going to be in trouble, your house is going to be burning down, and fire isn't going to be able to show up. Or you're going to have a heart attack, EMS isn't going to be able to show up. Or you're going to be getting mugged, and police are not going to show up. None of that is true whatsoever. These are just scare tactics. We have seen this in the mid-2000s. When we had a property tax revolt and corresponding additional homestead exemption. We are seeing the same thing right now. Do not believe any of the rhetoric when you hear this. Let's talk about fire and police right now. Government's first role is to protect its citizens. The way you protect citizens by funding fire and police first. So if a local government is saying that if they have to cut their budgets, then fire and police are going to suffer, what the local government is actually saying is that they aren't prioritizing your safety. They're prioritizing their other spending, because that's the first one that they're looking to cut. Fire and police should be the last ones, and there's way, way more than enough to fund them fully so they can do that and keep on protecting us. They are going to wage a campaign against you, the taxpayer. There's no other way of doing this. You are actually funding the government, and the government is putting out talking points and hitting the airwaves, spending your tax dollars effectively lobbying against you. I want to be clear on that. Every second that they spend on the airwaves or talking to local reporters about wanting to keep their bloated budgets, they are doing it on taxpayer dime, using your money effectively against you. So, they're going to try to refute our numbers. They're going to try to come up with their different sets of numbers. I'm going to tell you right now, it's all hogwash. The numbers are the numbers. You cannot get away from it. I want everyone to look right here at this placard. This placard was from the Tampa Bay Times when we first started doing this. Because all of this is predictable. This is so predictable. The increases are largely attributable to inflation and rising population, not government graft, local leaders say. This appeared in the Tampa Bay Times on 9/11/2025. Because local government is already making excuses. It's not their wasteful, excessive spending. It's not the expansion of government itself. It's worthwhile. Not only is it worthwhile, it's only due to those two things, inflation and population. Well, once again, we're here to call absolute BS on that. And we're going to show you how government is expanding way past inflation and population. So before we start unveiling these numbers, we're going to go into a little about the methodology and why we can say that they can safely, local governments can safely cut their budgets and they're not being truthful with you. This is how we did this. We have to compare how large the government has grown over a certain period of time. So what we did is we went back to the 2019-2020 fiscal year budgets. We started off there, which was pre-COVID. That was the last budget when governments were somewhat sane. Now, are we saying that the 2019-2020 government is sane? No, because I'm sure there was a bunch of fat and excess spending in that budget itself. But that's what we're using for our baseline for calculations. So we start off with the 2019-2020 fiscal year budget, and we moved it every year. We increased it as part of this exercise, indexing it every year, increasing it for inflation and population every year up until the 2024-2025 budget. So what we did is we went 5 years ago, we increased it for inflation and population, and we found out what the budget should be. Under normal circumstances, what it should be. And the budgets are all winding up over here. Effectively, your local governments are taking the extra property tax revenue and spending it willy-nilly. They are creating programs that government should not be creating. They're giving money away that they shouldn't be giving away. They're expanding programs that shouldn't be expanded. And they're creating the bureaucracy underneath the taxpayers and hurting the taxpayers at the same time. This means, according to our calculations, we have included, because we are indexing for fire and police, we're indexing for inflation and population going forward. That means as population expanded, we are including in our number the amount of money that they would need for extra fire and extra police. We included raises for law enforcement and general government employees. We included extra money because of the increased costs. So when we say we're indexing our number for inflation and population, that includes everything that a local government should or would need in order to deliver taxpayers to the people of Miami-Dade County. And then Miami-Dade County blew right past that number, like so other many governments have. And I want all of the press in the back to listen to me right now, because you guys are going to do your jobs. You guys are going to talk to your local elected officials, and you're going to call them up and you're going to say that CFO Angolia said that you have overspent and overtaxed your people. And they are going to say, no, it's because of inflation and population. Your next question should be, well, CFO Angolia already indexed for that. What's your answer then? They're not going to have an answer. And then they're going to say, well, this is all fine and dandy. CFO Angolia says that we've overspent and overtaxed. What does he suggest that we cut? Not my job. I'm not getting paid $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 as an administrator or a county manager to do that. You guys are doing that. I'm here to tell the people, the great people of Miami-Dade, how much their local government has overspent and overtaxed them. And that number in Miami-Dade is $302 million. That is over and above the amount of money that they would need to normally run the government, according to our calculations indexing for inflation plus population. Now this number, mind you, is the amount that we are deeming excessive and wasteful, but yet Miami-Dade government, if I can remember a while ago, announced that they had a $400 million deficit on top of that. What were they spending that money on? Now I know this is a big number. This is not the biggest on a percentage basis, that's Manatee County. But this is an awfully big number. This number is the biggest that we have seen in raw dollars in the state of Florida. Now I know this number concerns a lot of people. Commissioner Gonzalez is here. I know Commissioner Gonzalez has been looking out for the taxpayers, and he's been highlighting some of the waste, fraud, and abuse going on in our local government here in Miami-Dade. We're also here with Rep. Rizzo and Rep. Fabricio, who have been fighting for the taxpayers up in Tallahassee. I want to thank you guys for standing up for the taxpayers. It is much appreciated. But let's put it into context in a graph for you guys. This is Miami-Dade's general fund budget. As you can see, the blue starts off where we had calculated, they started there, where the blue ends is where we think that they should be indexing for inflation and population, and the red is the amount that your local government is excessively and wastefully spending. Now, no one ever said that government should grow by inflation and population. In fact, the more people you get, you work with economies of scale, the cost per unit should be going down. It does in the private sector, it doesn't in the government. So, since 2019, Miami-Dade's general fund budget went from $1.68 billion to $2.522 billion, which means in just 5 years, Miami-Dade's budget grew $844 million. That is a 50% increase, outpacing inflation and population growth. There is no other way to put this, but you are being overtaxed. There is no other way to put this, but they are taking your tax dollars and spending it unwisely. There is no other way to put this, but Miami-Dade needs to start being more fiscally responsible with taxpayer dollars. So let's talk about population growth. Miami-Dade is growing. We know Miami-Dade is growing. How do we know that? Over the last 5 years, Miami-Dade's population has grown around 65,500. That is a big amount for a lot of smaller counties, but not so big for a county as large as Miami-Dade. It is a small percentage, but nevertheless, it is still 65,500 new people that have moved into Miami-Dade County that the government has to account for. So what did the government do? The government used, Miami-Dade County used that to expand government. For every person that moved into Miami-Dade, Miami-Dade County spent around 13,000 people per resident. If a family of 4 moved into Miami-Dade, your local government is spending more than 51,000 people per family of 4. Most in the private sector would see, we have more business, let's become more efficient at our jobs. That's not what's happening here in Miami-Dade. They're taking the extra money and they're using it to expand government. So think about this. Let's put this a little in context. Let's say that family of four is paying about $10,000 worth of property taxes a year, which is a lot of money. Their spending, their budget went up $51,000. That math doesn't math. It doesn't make sense unless what makes sense is using it as an excuse to grow government. Now, how many government employees did Miami-Dade hire for that, to accommodate for that extra 65,000 people? This number is a little shocking. 2,843 new full-time employees. They added over 5 years to accommodate for a population growth of 65,000. So Miami-Dade has the highest in terms of raw number. They also have the highest in terms of how many full-time employees they have hired in order to accommodate for that. And I want to put this in perspective because the story that's not being told here, which will probably be told to my media friends in the back from the big government apologists that are going to try to defend this obnoxious behavior, is that it was fire and police. That's what expanded. As Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friends. Over the 5 years, there have been 301 new fire. There have been 177 new police for a total of 478. So 478 out of this number is fire and police. That means your local government took all this extra money and hired a bunch of bureaucrats. They hired people who really aren't protecting us, and they're again expanding the bureaucracy and expanding government. That means if it's just pure government workers, almost 2,400 of them. That's not being fiscally responsible. That is growing government. I still cannot wrap my head around how you have 65,000 new people move into an area and you hire 2,800 new full-time jobs. I mean, what happens? An extra piece of paper falls on their desk and it's like, oh, hire 10 people? I just don't get it. Somebody please explain that to me. So, to be clear once again, after inflation and population growth, figuring out the government should be with their budget, Miami-Dade is overspending and overtaxing residents in this county by the tune of $302 million. That is $302 million that we believe should be going back to the taxpayers. And if they did, they could easily cut everyone's millage rate in the general fund budget, not including school board budgets, not including other fees, other MSTUs, MSBUs, school boards. Just the general fund budget, they could have cut 0.53 mils. Money going back to the taxpayers. What does this mean? This means in Miami-Dade, if you have a home that is assessed, tax assessed at $500,000, you would save $266 a year. If you have a home that was tax assessed at $600,000, you'd be saving $319 a year. If you have a home assessed at $700,000, you would be saving $372 a year. Local governments are growing out of control. In stark contrast to what state government is doing. State government is looking for the efficiencies. Just because we have new people move into the state of Florida does not mean that state government is expanding. In fact, it's not. It's actually quite the opposite. So now, unfortunately, over 9 local governments that we have analyzed spending, we are now over the $1.5 billion mark of wasteful and excessive spending identified. $1.5 billion that should have never been taxed in the first place. Governments never should have had the opportunity to expand government and waste our tax dollars. $1.5 billion going to programs that have never been existed in the first place or expanded. The fact of the matter is that the local government has been taking the excuse of increased property values, yielding more property taxes, and taxing the heck out of the citizens. And they continue to cry poor. I don't understand, functionally, I don't understand Miami-Dade. How do you go from announcing you have close to a $400 million deficit when we think that you're overspending by $300 million? How does Miami-Dade argue with the sheriff here in Miami-Dade? The sheriff is saying that she needs more people to keep the community safe, and Miami-Dade is arguing with her, not giving the amount of money, when we're seeing that the government has more than enough money. They're expanding their own bureaucracy, but they're not giving fire and police the amount of money that they need in order to keep you guys safe. We proved it right here. 2,400 bureaucrats versus 477 law enforcement and fire. Let's stop the shenanigans. Let's stop overtaxing people. Put the money back in the hands and the pockets of the taxpayers. That is where it is best served, not in the hand of government bureaucrats who continue wasting your money, crying poor, and wanting more, and more. The taxpayers have had enough, and so have we. That's why property tax reform is an important part of what is going to be this next legislative session, and an important part in the November 2026 ballot. Because it is clear that local governments are not giving you guys the property relief that you deserve now. So it's going to be up to you guys to go to the ballot and vote for it yourself. The only way local governments are going to stop spending if it is only if it is imposed by them, by an outside force. The voters in this state of Florida are that outside force. It is going to be up to the voters to finally right-size government, because government will not do it themselves. Property taxes, I think, it's been very clear by our data here today, are going up not because they are expanding essential services. Anyone listening can ask himself this question: has your life gotten better by big government? I think clearly the answer is no. Has your life gotten better by all of this overtaxation? Are you seeing all of the fruits of the labors of the expansion of government? I think everyone would argue no with that. They're going up not because of essential services, but they are going up because of excessive, wasteful spending by career politicians and bureaucrats who think that the taxpayers of the state are an endless ATM. Every time they need more money, they want to go take a withdrawal. And the withdrawal is coming from the taxpayers in the form of higher millage rates, regular millage rates, status quo millage rates, but your property went up. Don't fall for that. Local governments are coming out and saying, we've kept the millage rate the same for 7 years. It's still a tax increase. As property values go up, millage rates should go down. Because if you keep millage rates the same and property goes up, it is a huge tax increase. Do not fall for that. It is always good to remind government that it's not their money, it is our money. And I, as your CFO, will not stand idly by and allow local governments to continue wasting at the pace that they are wasting your tax dollars. And local governments are absolutely deaf to what's going on. And you know what? Part of it is on us, because we don't show up to budget meetings. We don't look at our trim notices. We don't sit there and we don't compare what the budgets were before and what the budgets are after, mostly because we're all busy. We're trying to make ends meet. The only way we find out about this is when we get our mortgage statement or our tax bill, and we realized it jumped. And then it's like, what happened? I'm going to tell you what happened right now. Government happened. And we need to hold them accountable and make them smaller and more fiscally responsible. They need to listen more to the people on Main Street than the bureaucrats walking up and down the halls of city government. They need to listen to the grocery store clerk and stop listening to the city manager that makes $400K a year. Affordable housing here is a big issue in the state of Florida, and an even bigger issue here in South Florida. Now, many local officials will sit there on a campaign stump and say, or even from the dais, and say, affordable housing is a big issue. We need to do more for affordable housing. Yet when we tell them exactly how they can deliver more affordability in their own backyard by cutting property taxes, they're not interested. They're just interested in funding some other government program with your money. The easiest way to offer people relief and make things more affordable in the state of Florida is by cutting your damn taxes, which they are refusing to do. Local governments cannot complain about the lack of affordable housing at the same time that they are helping and attributing to the affordable housing crisis here in the state of Florida. They can cut their bloated budgets and deliver property tax relief. They're choosing not to. Just remember that. They can do it. They're making a conscious choice not to do it. Every dollar that a young couple starting saves on property taxes matter. Every dollar that a retired couple on Social Security, on a fixed income saves on property taxes matter. Every dollar that a single mom working 2 jobs saves on property taxes matter. People in the private sector have to do without all the time. It's time for government to actually do the same. Floridians have made it clear that they are absolutely demanding property tax relief. A lot of polling will show that this is an issue in between 70 and 80%. We cannot turn this place into a place that is so unaffordable that it turns into California. That will not happen on my watch. I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that does not happen. So with that, we are at the end of the presentation, and at this point, we are going to call up Turno Losell. Is that the last name? Yeah. All right, cool. He's a policy analyst from JMI, the James Madison Institute. The floor is yours, sir.
Hey everybody, first I wanted to say thank you to the CFO for having me here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Turno Losell. I'm a policy analyst at the James Madison Institute. JMI is a public policy think tank based in Tallahassee, focusing on helping Florida continue to be a blueprint for the nation. Unfortunately, like countless other states across the country, Florida's cost of living has skyrocketed in recent years. According to JMI's recent polling, 75% of Florida voters report that housing is unaffordable in their area.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Repeat that number for me, please?
According to JMI's recent polling, 75% of Florida voters report that housing is unaffordable in their area.
Thank you, sir.
Simultaneously, local governments have decided to fight fire with gasoline, allowing for property taxes to continue to spiral out of control. In the last 2 decades, kind of going against what this message on the Tampa Bay Times is talking about, property tax assessments have increased over 3 times faster than population growth and inflation combined. Consequently, localities now collect north of $55 billion annually, making property taxes the largest source of revenue. As the CFO mentioned, this is especially prominent in places like Miami-Dade County, where collections are up approximately 50% in just the last 5 years. This has had real consequences for Floridians. For homeowners, especially retirees on fixed incomes, they're watching their property taxes squeeze their monthly budgets tighter and tighter while local government spending continues to balloon. For businesses, they face these same pressures, discouraging capital investment and job creation that ripples throughout the Florida economy. And as a renter, I think a lot of this conversation kind of focuses on people that are homeowners, but we feel that pain too, and we're not insulated from these cost increases, because landlords tend to pass between 50 to 85% of that cost on to their tenants in the form of higher rents. So even if we don't own those homes, we still feel that cost. So ultimately, whether you run a business, you own, you rent, or anything in between, we're all paying a premium. Importantly, we feel that cost without noticing any proportional improvement in the quality of life for the services delivered. Out of any of these numbers or any percentage increase in local government spending, I could not tell you that I feel that same amount of benefit for me as a consumer, for me as a citizen. And that's really problematic, because if we're spending money for the basis of nothing, then why are we spending it in the first place? That's leading to Florida's to demand action. JMI poll found that 72% of registered voters now support property tax reform in some way, shape, or form. At a time where people can't agree on anything, 72% is a fundamental mandate, and that the time to act is now. We believe at JMI that the greatest opportunity to provide long-term relief to Floridians relies in substantive property tax reform. Without constitutional protections, though, any relief will be temporary as local governments will simply find other ways to expand their budgets. Before I wrap up, I think it's really important to acknowledge how fortunate we are in the state of Florida that we're having this conversation. The question isn't whether we're going to cut taxes, or any taxes for that matter, it's how and how much. And I think we need to take a step back and acknowledge that we are an important state that is able to have that conversation. We should value that. Even if we're going to have debates in the process, that we're in the position in the first place is incredibly empowering. And that's why we're so grateful for the leadership here in the state. We thank the CFO for continuing to fight for Florida taxpayers and demonstrating to local governments that meaningful property tax reform is both necessary and possible. Thank you.
So before I take questions, I do want to go over one other thing. That $302 million worth of excessive spending, I actually forgot something that is actually pretty important. I know, Doug, you're probably gonna ask a question anyway, so I'm not gonna go over it. So, when we come up with that number, not only do we index for inflation and population, we start off with the 2019-20 budget, and we move it forward every year for indexing for inflation and population 5 years forward to the 2024-2025 budget. And then what we do is we actually add additional buffers on top of that. We added a 5% buffer on the budget and a 10% buffer on what we can cut for property taxes. So when I say that we can safely cut this money, it's literally safely, because we're actually giving government, as weird as this sounds, the benefit of the doubt. We're actually saying that, hey, we recognize that as large as your government is getting, there are going to be inherent inefficiencies. So we actually give them a little bit of grace with these numbers. And they still blew past that number with that grace by $302 million. With that, more than happy, Doug.
Thank you. Mr. CFO, will you commit, Doug Hanks, manager, will you commit to releasing the actual figure for the FY 2024-25 index budget today that's on your chart? The actual number?
Yeah, I can give you the 24-25 budget. It is $2,522,427,000.
So that's what you came up with as the appropriate figure?
Not only that, we double checked with the county.
Repeat that number for us, please. $2 billion.
$2,522,427,000.
Thank you very much.
So because look, the government is so large, we actually called and we verified these numbers before we went. Doug, you got one more, baby.
I'm sorry, but that's their actual general fund. What's the number you came up with? I think,
Of total,
the FY, fiscal year 24-25 index budget, your calculation.
2.25 billion.
no, their actual budget was,
2522427, right?
yeah, so it started off in 2019-2020 at $1,678,000,000.
Yep.
A billion, I'm sorry, yeah, $1,678,000,000. 2024-2025 is $2,522,000,000.
And what's your index figure for 24-25?
Index figure, all total is 32.25.
No, what, I'm sorry? No, it's like what you thought it should be just by CPI and population.
I don't think I have that here, we just have the delta on my sheets, the difference.
Will you tell your staff, can you make that public today? Seems like that's the vital number for us to be able to check the math.
It's just a subtraction, it's easy. Yeah, it's just, I showed that number, it was the overspending was 823 million, that's the delta, that's,
Okay, fair enough, thank you.
got it. Next question, yes, ma'am.
For those of us doing the broadcast story today, can you go into some very specific things you found? Because in some of your last presentations, especially in South Florida, you had mentioned a couple of specifics. The next couple of days in checking those, for instance, Broward County Commissioners said, that's not what this is. They gave a whole different context to it.
Of course they did.
No judgment, right or wrong. I'm just saying it wasn't
Yeah.
what it looked like it was listed as. So can you give a couple of?
So
very
government
specific-
was doing something that wasn't listed as appropriate in their budget documents? That sounds
For instance.
very government.
No, for instance, one of the things that, you had mentioned was, I forget the number.
Well, let me just, so you understand.
Explain,
Yeah,
so you know what I'm
but let me
asking.
understand the differences in what we're doing and the differences that Doge is doing, because they're not the same here, and that may change the question. So, just so everyone understands, these are the Florida, these are our FAFO calculations, and this is showing high-level spending, going over how large the government has grown and how much they have excessively and wastefully spent. Doge is going in and finding specific examples of what they're spending on. The Doge team has yet to go in, retrieve all that information to give specific examples in Miami-Dade. This is just the overspending, but what I will tell you, that the waste in most of these budgets is going to be the expansion of the government bureaucracy itself. Because I think we've proven that for every person, every family of four moving into Miami-Dade, their budget is expanding by 51 million. That would be waste. It's pretty common sense that you do not need to spend that much money to deliver services to one family of four. So if you're looking for specific examples, those will eventually come out when the Doge audits when we go on site, when we start retrieving all the data. But that shouldn't matter to taxpayers. What should matter is the number of $302 million. First of all, we tried to get it to 305, it didn't work, because I really wanted to say Miami 305. I really wanted to try that. But we wanted to be accurate. The expansion of government is in itself a large piece of the waste.
Okay, so there's nothing that today. that you
Nothing
have.
specific today
Okay, then can I
about
get
some
it?
of the egregious examples. You know who would be a really good resource for some of those egregious examples? Your Commissioner Rob Gonzalez. I've seen him point out a lot of some of that stuff.
Okay, so-
Every government is wasting money on stuff they shouldn't be spending money on.
Then can I get another question?
Sure.
So you mentioned the sheriff.
And I won't even charge you $302 million for it.
Tack on my bill. So you had mentioned the sheriff's budget early, when the county budget negotiations were ongoing, Sheriff Rosie's got up in front, and I believe her initial number, she wanted $90 million, don't hold me to that, I'm just off the top of my head, which she wasn't gonna get from the get-go. They arrived at something probably a little more than half of that, but have you checked, for instance, the sheriff's budget, because in every county and municipality, the law enforcement budgets make up, that is the big kahuna of all the budgets.
Sure, and
So have
every
you gone
single-
into those particular budgets, because those are separate from the county?
No, they're not separate from the county, they're included in a general fund budget, but to your point, every single, they're line itemed out. Right, they're a separate line item, but they're included in the budget. Every single county has done the same thing. They argue with law enforcement, they argue with fire and say that they don't have enough money to fund their requests. I am not gonna sit here and I'm not going to interject myself in the middle of contract negotiations or budget negotiations between any division of government and the government itself. I'm not here to interject myself in the middle of union negotiations and the government themselves. What I'm here to say is that there is more than enough money to fund law enforcement. In fact, I know that Sheriff Rosie is, and that's what I call her, I love her, she's Sheriff Rosie to me. Sheriff Rosie arguing with the county commission that she needed more boots on the ground, and they said they didn't have the money. We're proving that they have. No, I'm not gonna get in the middle of the negotiation, all I'm proving and making a point that there is money for that. Next question. No, it's only press, only press. Any other press questions? Doug?
Yes, for the sheriff's office, should we judge the sheriff's office increases? Are you saying it should only increase by the rate of inflation and the population rate, the actual sheriff's office budget?
What I'm saying is that sheriff and fire is really the only division of government, branch of government, that has a good reason to expand as populations increase. So fire has metrics that they have to meet, sheriffs have best practices metrics that they meet. So as a population expands, it only makes sense that you have more fire and more police. What doesn't make sense is that you have more librarians.
But if
or you
you're-
have more janitors,
but if you're-
or you have more bureaucrats, or you have more administrative assistants.
But if you're a police officer and your pay only increases by the rate of inflation, are you getting a raise?
No, you're forgetting that just because something increases by population, inflation doesn't mean that there's not extra money there for population growth also. Do not fall into the trap that government has to increase by the minimum of inflation and population. We're saying that that is the maximum. So what I'm saying is, according to our calculations, there is more than enough money to give law enforcement their raises. Well, the adjustment for inflation for government workers and retirees, I mean, retirees have been going out without it. So how does government itself get some of these large raises? I'm saying that a lot of these government bureaucrats are getting bigger raises than what fire and police are getting.
Thank you.
Any last questions? Yes. Now I'm charging you $302 million.
Okay, start my bill. I'm gonna give you the question that we get since you started this campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's an article about $20 million to renovate the governor's mansion. And we get questions about.
Renovate the governor's mansion?
And then we get questions about, is the state looking at its own?
I'm so glad that you asked that question.
Then you can take that off my bill.
That is, when you compare, and we are going to do this, we've already done it, when you compare what we spend at the state to compare what you spend at local governments, they're diametrically opposed to each other. So these local governments should be careful what they ask for when they say that we should look at the state government and not themselves, because when we come out and we show what the state is actually doing, they're gonna be embarrassed, and then they're gonna wanna hide their heads in the sand. I promise you that. Guys, thank you for everything. I appreciate you guys. Gentlemen, keep on looking out for the taxpayers. We appreciate you, and we'll see you guys soon. Thank you.